Hello there, welcome to HolyWiki Recaps. Recaps in which we just don't give quick recaps of movies and series. But also we explain and break down story of movies and TV series. We give detailed explanation and still try our best to keep the length of video short. So you don't get bored. And in today's video we will explain the Guilty 2021 movie. So if you haven't watched this movie, we will recommend you to watch it because video is full of spoilers. So with that said, let's begin the explanation. Movie opens in California, where wildfire is spreading across the land, due to which criminal activities has increased. And police due to too much criminal traffic being not able to help everyone. Where in one 911 call, a man explained that his car has been stolen and inside the car there was his 3-month-old daughter. This shows how worse the situation across the California is. People are leaving the city to avoid the destruction. Due to which 911 call center is super busy. Where we are introduced with a troubled LAPD officer. Joe Baylor is working the night shift at a 911 call center. Joe has committed a crime in his past, and that crime was very serious. He has a daughter as well, but Joe's wife does not let him talk to their daughter. And obviously she don't live with him anymore. Joe has also been ignoring calls from a reporter named Catherine who wants to take an interview of Joe. Which shows that Joe hasn't told anyone about what he did in his past. That means Joe's crime is actually very serious. He is waiting for court hearing. Where he along with his friend has planned everything to get away with charges of crime that he did. Joe has anger issues as well. Reason Joe is working in 911 call center because as long as court doesn't give the final answer, he is not allowed to go back to his police duty. Joe receives number of calls during his late night shift. Being frustrated he calls his wife, but she does not pick his call. Joe receives a call from a woman named Emily Lighton, who is talking to Joe in a way like a mother talks to a child. Joe, believing it's a prank, when about to hang up on a call, hears a man's voice telling Emily to cancel the call. Joe, being suspicious, asks Emily if she is kidnapped. Emily reveals she has been abducted, replying with yes. So now Joe will ask questions. And Emily will only reply with yes or no. Joe learns from Emily that she and her abductor are traveling in a white van. And here Emily made a mistake as she uses the words of white van. Where a man forces Emily to hang up before she can provide more details. Joe relays the information to the California Highway Patrol, where they find a wrong van. That means they cannot locate the van without a license plate number. Joe is continuously receiving call from his wife, but he is ignoring it. As for now he only wants to focus on saving Emily. Joe calls Emily's home phone and speaks with her 6-year-old daughter Abby, who tells Joe that her mom left the house with her dad, Henry Fisher. And her dad told her not to wake her baby brother Oliver. Joe tells Abby that if something happens call 911 and tell the operator that she wants to talk with Joe. Which is actually a very smart move from Joe, as obviously Joe knows the whole situation. And if some other operator picks up the call, it will be transferred to Joe. And other operator will not consider it a prank call. I forgot to mention that same thing Joe told Emily before the call cancelled. After getting Henry's cell phone number from Abby, Joe is able to retrieve the van's plate number, which he relays to the CHP. He also sends a patrol car to check on Abby and her baby brother, Oliver. Joe learns Henry has a record of assault. He calls Henry and demands to know where he is taking Emily, but Henry hangs up the call. Joe then calls his former partner Rick, who is off duty, and asks him to visit Henry's house. Rick expresses concern about Joe's hearing, at which he is set to provide testimony. Basically Rick is that same friend who Joe had planned with to provide fake proofs to court to get away with his crimes. Here Rick is giving him an advice not to do anything stupid, as he is already under a radar. Joe receives a panicked call from Abby, where she explains to Joe that 2 men are at her doorsteps. And her parents taught her not to open door to strangers. That means her parents really did taught her good stuff. Well, Joel instructs Abby to let those 2 officers in, as they are there to help Abby. The officers notice blood on Abby, which is not Abby's blood. And upon searching the property, they find Oliver in the bedroom either gravely injured or dead. Oliver is being stabbed multiple times. That means Henry tried to kill Oliver, and that was the reason he told Abby to not to wake her brother up. Joe calls Henry, asking him why he killed his son Oliver. But Henry hangs up the call. Joe then calls Emily back and convinces her to pull the handbrake of the van. Which she does, but it fails to crash the vehicle. Henry puts Emily into the back of the van. Joe calls Emily again and tells her that, when Henry comes towards her, she should use anything as weapon to knock out Henry and run as far away as she can. Joe gives her relief that Henry is a monster and he deserves it. She tearfully tells Joe that she believed Oliver had snakes in his stomach and that she took them out. Joe is confused what she is talking about. When Henry stops the van and tries to remove Emily from the back, she hits him with a brick and flees. Meanwhile, Rick breaks into Henry's apartment and finds documents from a psychiatric treatment facility in San Bernardino, where Emily had been a patient. Joe calls Henry again, who explains him that he was taking Emily back to the facility. She had been off her medication for a number of weeks because they could not afford them, and, during a psychotic episode, Emily unintentionally hurt Oliver. Henry says he did not report the incident to the police because he does not trust the criminal justice system. And here all the cards are flipped, Joe standing in shock and disbelieving as what he has done. Emily calls Joe back from a freeway overpass, implying that she is preparing to die by suicide. Basically here Emily has realized her mistake and now wants to kill herself, as she knows that she is dangerous to her kids and husband. Joe directs the CHP to her location while attempting to talk her down. He tries to distract her by revealing that he killed a 19-year-old boy while on duty because he was angry with him. Basically Emily and Joe are like each other. An only difference is that Emily accepted her mistake, therefore she wants to kill herself. On the other hand, Joe keeps giving himself relief that what he did can be justified. Joe tells Emily that Abby needs her and that he promised Abby she would come home. As officers arrive, Emily says that she is gonna go be with Oliver, and the line goes dead. Joe thinks she has jumped. But later he gets a message from the CHP saying that they got her to come down safely. He also learns that Oliver is alive and in the ICU at the hospital. Joe has successfully saved life of Emily and Oliver, on which he is happy about. In the restroom, a distraught Joe calls Rick and asks him to recant his previous statement about the incident. He asks Rick to tell the truth at the hearing, even if it means he will spend years in prison. Joe then calls the Los Angeles Times to inform a reporter that he will plead guilty to a charge of manslaughter. Joe accepts his crime. And movie ends here. Overall, this was a very good thriller movie. Twist in the end was phenomenal. If you don't know, then here is an interesting fact. That this movie is a remake of 2018 Danish film The Guilty. And that 2018 Guilty movie was also selected for Best Foreign Country in 91st Academy Awards. Obviously this remake is not even close to the level of the original version. But that doesn't mean movie was bad. Like I said, this remake is overall good. This entire movie left us two questions. First, why Henry left his son Oliver dying. Why he didn't call 911 for Oliver. Simple answer is that he thought Oliver was dead. And that's what also police for a while assumed as well. But when they find that Oliver was still breathing, they took Oliver to the hospital and Oliver's life was saved. Oliver's survival was a miracle. Second question, which is also the conclusion of the movie, is who was guilty? Henry and Emily were not guilty for sure. Joe and us audience were guilty. This movie conveys a message that how society judges anyone without knowing everything. How we all are judgmental. Let's be honest here. All of us thought that Henry was guilty. It was us and Joe who, without knowing the whole situation, jumped on the conclusion. Now that doesn't mean we should not try to help anyone. It was because of Joe that Oliver survived. Joe did everything right besides going too deep into investigation. Which again, as a 911 operator for Joe, was understandable. But the point of movie was that don't be over-judgmental. And least but not the last. The final message that the movie conveys is that always accept your mistakes and crimes. So this was my recap video on The Guilty movie. So without stretching this video too long, let's end it here. But before that, I have a small request that must leave your thoughts down in comments section about this movie. Make sure to hit that like button. And most important, must subscribe to my channel if you want stay notified for my latest recap videos.